So get this. 2/3 of American workers are navigating the biggest economic shift of their lifetime completely alone. 81% of business leaders admit that most companies in their industry would be caught AI washing. The pressure is crushing both sides, and it's creating some crazy realities.
So get this, John, we were both at the Milken Institute Global Conference, and we just released our 7th year of the Listening Project together. But this year we went deep on one question: what's actually happening inside American companies on AI? Not the investor deck, not the keynote, but what's real.
Yeah, Libby. In our Harris Poll survey, we talked to 2,000 Americans, nearly 1,300 workers, and over 500 business leaders at the VP plus level from companies doing over $2 billion in revenue.
And what came back are just two different realities in one economy. On one side, you have 92% of business leaders using AI tools daily or weekly. You have 77% of them thinking about AI's impact every single day. They're basically living, breathing, and eating this transition morning to night. And John, there's even some power users, these engineers that are running AI monthly bills north of $150,000 a month on tokens.
And Libby, on the other side, you have 68% of American workers say they're navigating the AI workforce transition entirely on their own. No guide, no roadmap, no one's even talking to them about it. So leadership is actually spending $150,000 a month on AI and spending 0 minutes a month preparing their people for it.
Yeah, and it gets wilder. When we ask leaders confidentially what's really going on, the mask came off. 85% admit that there's pressure to appear further along than they actually are. And here's the kicker, John. 8 in 10 business leaders believe that most companies in their industry would be caught AI washing if anyone looked under the hood.
Oh my. So the workers are alone and the leaders are AI washing?
Yeah, and it's creating this intense feeling. On the worker side, 46%, so nearly half of all American workers, feel like they're training the AI systems that will replace them. Amongst Gen Z, our youngest workers, it's 56%. And the thing is, they're not necessarily wrong, right, John? Like, Meta started tracking employee keystrokes, mouse movements, screenshots across hundreds of sites to train its AI models. And the kicker is that there's no opt-out allowed in this. So the same week that Meta announced this mandatory AI tracking, they also announced roughly 8,000 layoffs. And so in that construct, American workers are building the tool that replaces them at their own desks.
And on the leader's side, Libby, companies are pouring money into systems nobody's trained to use, announcing transformations that haven't happened, and planning workforce cuts they won't talk about out loud. 56%, Libby, of leaders expect entry-level roles to go first, yet 61% of workers say leadership barely mentions AI at all to them.
Yeah, so you have one side that is silently planning cuts and the other side that are silently panicking, and nobody's having an honest conversation. And the thing that you and I talked about a lot while we were at Milken, and a key data finding here, is what we call the optimism gap. So listen to this. We found out that 68% of business leaders expect to be better off financially in the next 5 years due to AI. But only 27% of workers say the same.
Yeah, Libby, a 41-point chasm, right? Leaders see opportunities, workers see a cliff, same building, 2 different planets. We're calling it AI washed.
On both sides of this gap, nobody is being honest. Leaders are projecting confidence to the boards and investors because they have to, and workers are showing up every day pretending they're fine while Googling which AI skills matter at midnight on their own dime.
That's AI washed, not a story about bad actors. It's a story about a system where the pressure to project certainty has crushed any space for honest conversation at exactly the moment we need it most. Libby, let's talk about what AI wash looks like inside companies, because the say-do gap is staggering.
Yes, John, this is something you talked a lot about in your plenary to Milken, but 87% of business leaders say AI workforce readiness is their top 3 priority, meaning it's incredibly important, right? But according to workers, 4 in 10 of them have received zero employee support in the past 12 months. Not insufficient, John, but none at all. And it's interesting because when you look at Gen X and Boomer workers, nearly 6 in 10 have received zero support.
It's really remarkable. The people with the most to lose are getting the least help.
Yes, and only 1 in 5 of American workers have received formal training. Less than 1 in 5 have gotten transparent communication about how AI will affect their roles. And meanwhile, nearly 1/3 of business leaders admit that they're significantly investing more in the AI systems themselves than preparing the workforce to work alongside them.
Yeah, they're thinking commercially. They're not thinking culturally, right? They're funding the technology and ghosting the people.
Yeah, that's right. And this timeline is real. A quarter of business leaders expect roughly half of the current workforce roles to be gone by 2031. That's just 5 years from now, John.
76% of leaders admit it's difficult to be fully transparent about AI's impact on jobs. I get that. They know their workers are afraid. They know cuts are coming, and they're choosing silence, not because they're cruel, because perhaps, Libby, they don't know what to say.
Yeah, and in the absence of honest conversations, workers are writing their own story about what's coming. And I think this is what we have to recognize. When workers write their own story, sometimes it's darker than reality.
Yeah, that's the trap. The silence doesn't protect anyone. It just lets fear fill the vacuum. 64% of workers believe that if they lose their job to AI, they'll be completely out on their own. And 66% of leaders agree with them.
Yeah, John, both sides see this cliff and no one's talking about it. That's AI wash. John, here's where the story turns. Because underneath the wash, underneath the two worlds, we found something that shocked us, right?
Libby, this might be the most important part of our research. And frankly, I did not see it coming. In the most politically divided era in modern American history, AI workforce readiness has quietly become the most bipartisan issue in the country. 83% of Americans agree that preparing the workforce for AI should transcend partisan politics. And Libby, that includes 82% of Republicans, 83% of independents, and 85% of Democrats.
Yes, John, we haven't found strong bipartisan consensus on almost anything in recent memory, right?
That's for sure. In a country that fights about everything,
83% agree on this, and amongst business leaders, it's 90%.
And it's not just sentiment, Libby. We tested specific policies, things like portable benefits that follow workers between jobs, advanced notice requirements before AI displaces roles, government-funded training, wage insurance to cover the gap during transitions. Every single one cleared majority of support from workers and over 82% of leaders.
Every single one. So I think what that shows us, right, John, is that the political will exists. The public urgency exists. And 88% of business leaders agree no one company can solve this alone, which is, indicating that we need a coordinated national response to move this forward.
So the consensus is there. The question is, who moves first?
Because that's the deepest layer of this AI wash, right? Leaders personally support these policies at 85% or higher. But when we ask which ones their companies are actually participating in, this is where it gets tricky. The numbers cater down to 21 and 45%.
That's a 50 to 40 point gap between conviction and action.
Yeah, so the belief is individual, the inaction is institutional, and leaders want to do the right thing, but they're trapped between the short-term market pressure and the long-term workforce investment. And without coordination, nobody goes first.
Classic collective action problem, except this time the stakes are the middle class. Okay, so what does AI washed mean for businesses?
Well, I think first and foremost, right, we need to break the silence on this. Workers aren't asking for certainty. They know you don't know it. They're just asking for some honesty. It's like when you know someone's coming to dinner, but no one's telling you about it. You need to start talking to them. It's not a weakness. It's just part of what rebuilds trust. Because right now, your workers are writing their own narrative about what's coming or who's coming to dinner, and it's much darker than reality.
Second, close the investment gap. Walmart, for instance, is committing to AI train all 2.1 million of its employees, from tech staffs to greeters. IBM is tripling entry-level hiring because they know that gutting junior roles creates a seniority cliff in 5 years. And IKEA retrained customer service workers into interior design advisors instead of replacing them. These aren't charity, Libby. These are bets that investing in humans is the better long-term play.
Yeah, I think that's so inspiring. The other thing I would think about, and this is for my Gen Xers, right, who are always forgotten about, build with skeptics in mind. Gen X specifically, right, at a big moment where they're leading corporations themselves, has heard the retraining promise before and watched it evaporate after the dot-com bust, the financial crisis, the hollowing out of manufacturing. For Gen X in particular, 57% need guaranteed income during training before they'll participate in training. They don't want the vision deck. They really want the receipts of what AI upskilling is going to give them and deliver to them.
Those poor Gen X, they've always been latchkey kids.
I know.
And fourth, Libby, use the consensus. 83% of the country agrees. 90% of leaders agree. This is the rarest thing in American life right now, right? Near universal alignment on policy direction. The companies now, I think, that step into that space publicly, that support coordinated workforce transition out loud, will earn a kind of trust no marketing campaign can buy.
Yeah, that's so much about what in this story gives me hope. John, and we even found nearly 7 in 10 workers believe that AI can create more opportunity than it eliminates. The thing is, they're saying we need to get the approach right and we need to act now.
They're not anti-AI.
No, they're just anti-abandonment. 2/3 would enroll in a government-sponsored retraining program. 39% would switch to a different industry. They're ready to move. They just need someone to build the bridge for them. And here's what AI wash really means. 2 worlds inside one economy, both under enormous pressure, both performing certainty that they don't feel, and a silence between them that grows more dangerous by the day.
But the breakthrough in this data isn't the gap, it's what's hiding underneath it.
Yeah, an 83% consensus in this country right now, workers ready to move, leaders who are privately agreed on policy, and a public aligned across every single party line.
We've spent years saying Americans can't agree on anything.
On this, they already have. The consensus exists, the window's open.
The only question is who's going to cut through the wash
and start building.
So remember, AI washed, 2 worlds inside one economy, both performing, neither talking. And yet, the most bipartisan consensus in a generation hiding underneath.
Your dinner party conversation starter? In a country that can't agree on anything, 8 in 10 Americans across party lines agree we need to prepare workers for AI. And nearly 7 in 10 of those workers say they're figuring it out completely alone.
Not because they've given up,
but because they're still waiting for someone to tell them the truth.
I'm John Gersma.
And I'm Libby Rodney. Thanks for listening to So Get This.
So Get This is a Bubbler Media iHeart podcast production